Welcome to the Provider Lunch and Learn Preparing for Visits walkthrough. Before we begin, if you have questions, please enter them into the questions box only. My name is Casey Purvis, and I'm the Central East Region Coordinator. Today, I have with me
Rebecca Molinek, Southeast Region Coordinator.
And Kajara McCoy, Central East Region Lead Consultant.
Before we begin, it's important to note that today's webinar is part 2 of the Preparing for Visits series. If you missed out our first webinar, you can find it on the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning's YouTube channel at Georgia DeCal. The title of the webinar is Provider Lunch and Learn Child Care Learning Centers Preparing for Visits Paperwork Prep. Also, if you missed the first one, don't stress, you will not be behind or lost on today's webinar. However, we do highly recommend that you go back and watch the first webinar. Our objectives for today's webinar are to identify parts of a regulatory visit. We hope that we are able to help you understand what all is evaluated during regulatory visits, as well as identifying some of the questions we may ask staff in order to determine compliance. It's important to understand the two types of regulatory visits that a program can receive from their consultant. Programs typically receive 2 regulatory visits a year from their consultant. While there are more than 2 visit types total, today we are only focusing on regulatory visits for this webinar. First, there is the monitoring visit. The consultant will evaluate all core rules during the monitoring visit. Additionally, the consultant will reevaluate any previous citations from the last visit conducted. The second type of visit is the licensing study. This visit is a bit more in-depth because the consultant will evaluate all core rules as well as all non-core rules. Typically, a licensing study will last longer than a monitoring visit, and it's not unusual for a licensing study to last a few hours. Core rules are child care licensing rules that have been deemed to have the most significant impact on children's health and safety. These rules are evaluated during both licensing studies and monitoring visits. On your screen, you will see chapters with core rules. These include criminal records checks, diapering, discipline, equipment and toys, first aid and CPR, hygiene, license capacity, medications, physical plant hazards, playgrounds, infant sleep safety, staff compliant with laws, staff to child ratios, supervision, swimming pool and water-related activities, and transportation. Not all rules within a category are core rules. Only specific rules identified within each category. For example, the equipment and toys category has 8 rules. However, only one of these rules has been identified as a core rule. All staff are responsible to ensure core rules are followed at all times. You may hear your consultant refer to the indicator manual. The indicator manual is a resource available to you at all times. Every rule can be found in the indicator manual with the explanation of the type of rule, intent of the rule, clarification of the rule, indicators that regional consultants look for during visits for each rule, and best practices to help programs succeed at meeting and exceeding the rule. Although best practices are not required, we include them because programs that utilize them routinely meet and exceed licensing rules, easily achieving sustained good standing compliance. It is important to note that the indicator manuals are updated quarterly to ensure that you have the most current information needed to understand and meet all licensing rules, including core rules. The video on this slide shows you how you can find the indicator manual from our webpage. First, you will go to www.decal.ga.gov. From here, you'll click on the For Providers on the blue navigation bar, then click Child Care Services. A new page will appear with options on the left sidebar. Scroll down to Rules and Requirements. Then you will see Rules and Regulations. Click on the light blue tab titled Rule Guidance, and the indicator manual will be the first option titled Child Care Licensing Rules and Regulations Indicator Manual. CCS also has a wide variety of licensing resources available to support providers. This slide shows just a few that you can find from our CCS Technical Assistance site. To find these resources and more, scan the QR code at the bottom right of your screen. Once you have scanned the QR code, you can scroll to the bottom of the TA page and select the tabs you want to see, including licensing, compliance resources, best practices, and Spanish resources. More frequently, resources are added. Check back often. So now that you know how to find the indicator manual, it's important to understand its purpose and how it can be a resource for you and your program. On your screen is the Child Care Learning Center's indicator manual. The table of contents will show you each chapter of the Child Care Learning Center's rules and regulations. For this video, we will look at the playground chapter. As you can see on your screen, the rules for the chapter will be listed for you to review just like you would in the rule book. Highlighted in yellow, you can see that this particular playground rules are non-core rules. You will be able to read over the intent of the rule, clarification of the rule, indicators when evaluating, and best practices, as well as things for you to consider in your program. Now let's take a look at another rule in the playground chapter. The rule regarding fencing is shown on your screen. Highlighted in yellow, you can see that this rule is a core rule. Again, you still have access to the intent of the rule, clarification, indicators, best practices, and things to consider. However, because this is a core rule, you will also see the core rule severity level used by consultants to determine if the rule violation is a low risk, medium risk, high risk, extreme risk, or if technical assistance may be a more appropriate option. Finally, you may also find links to other resources in the indicator manual. These are all great tools to use when working to ensure compliance in your program. During the presentation, you will see these speech bubbles. Each speech bubble will identify potential questions that your consultant may ask when they are not able to observe an activity. Your consultant will conduct 2 walkthroughs of your program. The first is the initial walkthrough. This walkthrough will occur when the consultant first arrives at the program and has informed you of their visit. The second walkthrough will happen after and will become a more in-depth observation of the classrooms and other areas in the center. During the initial walkthrough, the consultant will ask how many children are present, as well as the staff names and the ages of the children present. This is done to verify 2 things. First, that the classroom is maintaining their licensed capacity, which is the total amount of children that the classroom is allowed to hold. And the second is to determine that the class is maintaining appropriate staff to child ratios. During the initial walkthrough, the consultant will also ask all adults present for their first and last name to verify satisfactory criminal background check letters. The consultant will also review a current staff list to determine satisfactory criminal background check letters for staff who are not present during the visit.
After the initial walkthrough is completed, the consultant will conduct a second walkthrough to inspect classrooms and other areas of the program. All core rules are evaluated during both monitoring visits and licensing study. Non-core rules are evaluated during the licensing study, or if a non-core rule was cited on the previous visit and needs to be reevaluated for follow-up. During the second walkthrough, the consultant will take notes regarding rule violations or areas of concern. The consultant will also take photos and possibly make copies of paperwork for documentation. The consultant may ask staff questions regarding practices and procedures for areas that they are not able to observe during the visit. While in the infant classroom, the consultant may ask to review infant feeding plans. The consultant will also observe infant bottles to ensure that they are pre-made, labeled with the child's first and last name, and refrigerated. The consultant will also check how infant bottles are reheated and may ask or observe feeding times to ensure that bottles are not propped when feeding children. The consultant will also evaluate diapering areas in all diapering classrooms. This includes ventilation, ensuring that children are never left unattended while at the diapering table, ensuring that there is a hand washing sink adjacent to the diapering table with warm running water available. The consultant will also check to ensure that the diapering surface is smooth and non-porous. Diapering supplies are not within arm's reach of the child while on the table, and that there are no bottles or food items in the diapering area. It is important to note that non-porous diapering surfaces do not include diaper changing pads with embossed designs. Your consultant can evaluate diapering in a few different ways. They may ask the staff to verbally tell them the diapering steps. They may also ask the staff member to change a diaper so that they can observe it. Consultants will also evaluate sleeping and resting requirements for children. The consultant will look at the condition of cots and/or mats used by children for nap time. The consultant will also check to ensure that children under the age of 2 are not using pillows. Cots and mats must be in good repair, washable, covered with waterproof material, and mats should be at least 2 inches thick. Cots and mats must be used by the same child daily and marked for individual use. The arrangement of the sleeping equipment will also be reviewed, as well as sheets and blankets. If the consultant is able to observe nap time, they will check to ensure that children are laying down in a head-to-toe placement. Head-to-toe placement is done when one child is laying down with their head facing the feet of another child laying next to them. One reason to place the children like this during nap time is to prevent the spread of illness as much as possible. For example, if the child in the middle sneezes, they are not sneezing in their classmate's face, but toward their feet instead. This is especially helpful in those winter months when we see more sick children throughout. The consultant will also check the lighting of the classroom during nap time. It is important that classrooms are not completely dark so that children are visible during nap time. Staff should be able to clearly see any child in the room. The consultant will also ask how often the program washes sheets and blankets for the children. Infant safe sleep. The consultant will also evaluate safe sleeping requirements for infants. These are especially important due to the risk of sudden infant death syndrome. The consultant will check to ensure that each crib is in compliance with the Consumer Product Safety Commission and the American Society of Testing and Materials International Safety Standards. If you are unsure if your cribs are in compliance, check the manufacture date of each crib. As of June 28, 2011, all cribs manufactured, sold, or leased are required to meet the safety requirements. If any of your cribs were manufactured prior to June 28, 2011, you will need a certificate of compliance to indicate that the crib meets Compliance Code 16 CFR Part 1219. If the crib is not a full-size crib, the crib should meet Compliance Code 16 CFR Part 1220. Along with ensuring that the crib is in compliance, the consultant will check the construction of each crib to ensure that they are in good repair and free of hazards. In addition to cribs, the consultant will check crib mattresses to ensure that they each fit properly in the crib without any gaps. The consultant will also check to ensure that the mattresses are waterproof and at least 2 inches thick. The consultant will check crib sheets to ensure that they are tight fitting. The consultant will also ask staff how often crib sheets are changed and or washed. It is important to note that the cribs and crib sheets are for individual use only. The consultant will check to ensure that there are no objects placed in or on the crib with infants and that cribs are used for sleeping only. The consultant will also ask staff how they lay infants to sleep in the crib. It is important to remember that regardless of if the infant can roll over, staff should always place the infant to sleep on their backs. The consultant may also observe the kitchen area to ensure compliance. The consultant will check storage areas and expiration dates. It is important to note that food should not be stored on the floor and separately from cleaning products and other chemicals. The consultant will check that the refrigerator and freezer temperatures are appropriate. Food prep areas should be clean and non-porous. However, all kitchen areas should be maintained to prevent insects or rodents. For example, kitchen trash cans should always be lined with a plastic liner and have a tight fitting lid. The consultant will check to ensure that the kitchen lights are shielded and that ventilation is available, whether by mechanical or natural means. The consultant will ask or observe your dishwashing procedures. The consultant will observe menus to ensure that they follow USDA guidelines. The consultant will observe meals to ensure that foods that are associated with young children's choking incidents are cut to the appropriate sizes based on each child's age and each individual eating, chewing, and swallowing ability. The consultant may also ask what staff do with unconsumed food after meals. The consultant will observe supervision practices throughout the center. This includes all transitions and activities. It is important to remember that staff must be alert and positioned to hear and see children at all times. Staff should also be able to respond promptly to the needs and actions of children in a timely manner. During meal times, it is especially important to note that staff should be seated within arm's reach of children 36 months and younger. Mealtime is not the time to put out cots or mats or clean up cots or mats, but for staff to be engaged and attentive. The consultant will check staff records for first aid and CPR. It is important to note that with the new rule changes beginning July 1st, 2025, staff are required to complete their pediatric first aid and CPR training within 45 days of employment. It is also required that at least one staff person in each classroom is pediatric first aid and CPR certified. During the visit, all medication documentation will be reviewed by the consultant. This includes parental authorization, prescription information, times and dosages to be given. The consultant will also check to ensure that medications are not accessible to children and in their original container. For more information regarding medication documentation, please refer to the Prepping for Visits Paperwork Prep recorded webinar. This can be found on the video titled Preparing for a Regulatory Visit with Child Care Services on the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning's YouTube page.
Playgrounds. The consultant will need to see all licensed outdoor play areas at your center. During their walkthrough, the consultant will observe the playground as well as all routes leading to and from the playground to ensure safety. Shade structures, playground equipment, and toys, as well as fencing and resilient surfacing, will also be observed. The playground will also be assessed for any potential hazards. This includes, but is not limited to, active ant beds, tripping hazards, sharp concrete edges, and litter. Playground fencing. The consultant will walk the entire perimeter of the fence. The fence will be measured to ensure that the fence measures at least 4 feet tall on all sides. The consultant will ensure that the fence is constructed with the approved fencing material if the fence is in good repair and that fence gates are kept closed. Fencing should be free of any gaps or holes that may pose an entrapment or escape hazard. Gaps or holes measuring over 3.5 inches or larger are considered non-compliant. Fencing materials should not have sharp or long edges that could potentially hurt children. This includes nails, screws, fencing bolts, and metal wires. If the fence is wooden, the consultant may rub their hands over the wood to determine if the wood is in good condition and not splintering. Fencing should be securely installed and maintained to include all required railing, posts, wires, and caps. These requirements include both exterior and interior playground fencing. Playground surfacing. The fall zone from a piece of equipment is the area in which any activity or movement can be expected to take place around the equipment and includes the area under and around the equipment where a child might fall. The consultant will ensure that fall zones have protective surfacing material and do not overlap with the fall zones of nearby equipment. The consultant will observe the type of material used for resilient surfacing. Examples of acceptable loose fill materials include sand, pea gravel, wood chips, wood mulch, and shredded rubber. Resilient surface materials should not include sharp, jagged edges, splintered wood, or large pieces. The consultant will measure loose fill material under any swings and playground equipment that is more than 5 feet tall. At least 6 inches of loose fill material is required if the equipment is at least 5 feet or taller. 3 inches of loose fill material is required if the equipment is between 3 and 5 feet. Equipment lower than 3 feet may rest on sand or grass and will not have a depth of resilient surface measured. If rubber mats are used in addition to the loose fill material, the rubber mat must be flush with that loose fill material to prevent the mat from being a potential hazard to the children. If poured-in rubber surfacing is used, providers must obtain an ASTM certification from the manufacturer, and it should be kept on file. More information regarding the ASTM certification can be found on the video titled Preparing for a Regulatory Visit with Child Care Services on the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning's YouTube page. Playground equipment. The consultant will observe all playground equipment to ensure that it is in good repair, properly secured, and does not pose a potential hazard to the children. The consultant may push or pull equipment to make sure that it is properly secured. The consultant will also observe the playground equipment to ensure that there are no broken parts, holes, sharp materials, rust, or chipping paint. Playground equipment should be assembled and used in compliance with the manufacturer's guidelines. Both secured and unsecured playground equipment should be positioned in a way that allows staff to supervise children. Bathrooms. During the walkthrough, the consultant will observe all bathrooms used by enrolled children. The consultant will ensure that there is an adequate amount of working toilets, urinals, and sinks based on the center's capacity. There should be 1 sink and 1 toilet available for each group of 12 children. For school-age centers, there should be at least one sink and one toilet for each group of 25 children. The consultant will ensure that hand washing sinks are in working condition with warm running water, that the bathrooms are clean and equipped with necessary supplies, such as hand washing soap, paper towels, and tissue. The consultant will also ensure that there is a working exhaust fan or screen window in each bathroom to control odors and prevent the spread of contagious diseases. While it is important to ensure that the bathrooms are kept clean, items such as toilet brushes, plungers, and cleaning chemicals cannot be stored accessible to children in the bathroom. Hand washing for infants, children, and staff are observed by the consultant. If hand washing cannot be observed, the consultant may ask staff about their hand washing procedures and routines. Washcloth hand washing is permitted for infants who do not have neck control, are too heavy to hold, or cannot stand safely to wash their hands at a sink. In this case, an individual washcloth should be used only once per child. The consultant will also observe or ask about procedures for handling soiled clothing, storing garbage or waste, sanitizing potty chairs, and children's drinking cups. Soiled clothing should be stored in a way to prevent children's access, such as placing them in individual plastic bags. Bags or containers used for soiled clothing should also be placed in an area that is inaccessible to children. Garbage and waste should be disposed in a garbage can with a plastic liner and tight-fitting lid or cover. Potty chairs and reusable drinking cups should be cleaned and sanitized after each use. The consultant will observe children's bodies, faces, and clothing to ensure that children are being kept clean, dry, and comfortable. This includes changing diapers each time a child is wet or has a bowel movement, cleaning of faces and noses, and changing of clothing as they become soiled or wet. The consultant will also observe and ensure that infants and children do not wear pacifier straps or clips, as they pose a potential hazard and are not permitted in child care facilities. Discipline. The consultant will assess discipline during the visit by observing conversations and interactions. The consultant may ask staff how discipline is administered if observations cannot be made at the time of the visit. Discipline should not be detrimental to children's physical or mental health and should not include physical punishment such as those listed in this slide. Sexual abuse and engaging in sexual or overt conduct in the presence of any child is also strictly prohibited. Please remember that any abuse and suspected abuse should be reported to the proper authorities. The consultant will listen to interactions between staff and children, as well as amongst children, to determine appropriate discipline. Some examples of this include, but are not limited to, threatening to call a child's parent, name calling, isolating a child from the group, forcing children to eat or withholding meals from children, confining children in equipment such as high chairs, giving medication such as melatonin or Benadryl for behaviors or nap, punishing toileting accidents, or refusing to allow a child to use the restroom, forcing children to nap or not allowing children to nap. It is also important to note that staff should not allow children to discipline or humiliate other children. Staff should use timeout appropriately in that children under the age of 3 should not be put in timeout. However, children 3 years old and older can sit in timeout for 1 minute per the child's age. For example, it is appropriate for a 4-year-old child to sit in timeout for 4 minutes. However, it would not be appropriate for the 4-year-old child to sit in timeout for 5 minutes or more. Activities. Your consultant will observe the activities, toys, and equipment in your classroom. They will check to ensure that these things are age appropriate and accessible. The consultant will also observe if children have the opportunity to make choices in the activities they participate in. Your consultant will ensure that there are no detrimental activities that the children are allowed to engage in. For example, if a child is climbing on a shelf, the consultant will ensure that staff redirect the child to prevent an incident or injury from occurring. Children should not be in confining equipment for more than 30 minutes at a time. This can include saucers, high chairs, bouncy seats, or anything else that restricts a child's movement. Activities should also include outdoor play. Infants should have at least 1 hour of outdoor play per day, while older children should have an hour and a half. Your consultant will also review your current lesson plan. Activities for every age group should include variety. Please refer to the activities listed on this slide. When reviewing activities in a classroom, your consultant will ensure that the children have routines that include supervised naps or rest periods. Media use should be limited to no more than 2 hours per day. This includes the use of videos on a tablet, phone, or television. Evening activities will vary and include quiet activities and rest time. Your consultant will review your schedule during your visit to check for a balance of activities. However, there may be times when you are unable to follow your schedule in full due to the needs of the children, which should always be considered first. Animals. Animals should always be controlled to ensure that they are not a hazard to the children. They should be confined, clean, and appropriately caged. There are limitations and restrictions on the type of animals allowed in the classroom. For example, no animals such as, but not limited to, pit bulls, pit bulldogs, ferrets, and poisonous snakes shall be permitted at any time on the premises. Farm animals cannot be housed on property within 500 feet of the building. Animals should be vaccinated, and the vaccination records should be kept on site. The American Disabilities Act supports the use of service animals in child care facilities to assist children with disabilities. Please reach out to your consultant for clarifying information regarding the use of service animals in your program. Classrooms. The consultant will observe and assess all licensed classrooms, whether they are in use or not during the visit. The room, as well as all equipment and furniture, should be kept clean and free of hazardous conditions. This includes flooring tiles, rugs, ceiling tiles, and areas that make up the classroom structure. The consultant will ensure that there are no hazards accessible to the children. This includes cleaning supplies and any materials labeled "keep out of reach of children." The consultant will ensure electrical outlets are being covered if the outlet does not contain tamper-resistant receptacles that prevent objects from being inserted. The consultant will observe the storage of the cots or mats to ensure that they are inaccessible to children and do not make direct contact with the floor. The consultant will observe the equipment and toys to ensure that they are safe and free of hazards, such as sharp edges or toxic paint, that they are clean and used in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. This includes ensuring that batteries are replaced in toys as needed. Each child shall have an area to store individual items. This could be a cubby. Floors and rugs should be smooth, tight, and clean. Classrooms should maintain a temperature of 65 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on the season. Doors that are not approved for childcare shall be locked or latched to prevent children's access. Heating and cooling equipment should be protected to also prevent children's access. This includes air purifiers. Transportation. Transportation vehicles used to transport children will be assessed during the visit. Vehicles shall have an annual safety check conducted by a mechanic and kept on file. The consultant will observe the vehicle to ensure that there is a fire extinguisher, heat, first aid kit, and a window breaking tool. The consultant will also look at the interior of the vehicle to make sure that it is clean and that there are no potential hazards accessible to the children. If child passenger restraints are required, the consultant will assess that they are installed according to the manufacturer's guidelines and are not expired. No window in a transporting vehicle except the driver's window shall be open to more than 50% at any time children are on board. Swimming. If you have a pool on your property, the consultant will observe the area to ensure that there is a fence surrounding the pool and the gate is locked to prevent children from accessing the pool. The consultant will also check local approvals. The consultant will also observe wading pools, swimming documentation, and discuss supervision as well as staff-child ratios with the staff during swimming and water-related activities. If you have trouble locating the indicator manual on our website, a QR code has been created for a quick and easy way to obtain this resource. Please scan the QR code on this slide using your smart device, and you will have direct access to our current CCLC indicator manual.
Thank you for attending the webinar. If you have any questions, please email ccswebinar@decal.ga.gov. All resources can be found on our website, www.decal.ga.gov. We will stay on for just a few more minutes to answer any unanswered questions. We will now be ending the webinar. Again, thank you for attending, and if you have any questions, please email them to ccswebinar@decal.ga.gov.